But now what I want to do is focus on the next piece that we're doing here, which has to do with helping you um, use your things without being used. And so, probably what you're going to see, if you haven't already figured out, there's a very intentional structure to how we've set up today. And what I've looked to do is, as I've mentioned, I'm taking you through this framework that I've done before that I know is effective, but I wanted to get more voices, better voices, deeper voices, not deeper voices like this or like this, but deeper, deeper voices. Um, it's a sugar kicking in. So what we're going to focus on is if you look at all the things you have, I'm going to suggest to you that you have some assets, some things are liabilities, and some are time wasters. And what we want to do is, just as what we referenced in this last talk, was look at how do we have more of our things be things that we really want in our life. And so I'm going to give you a really quick, simple definition here. And I'm going to say that from a lifestyle and wealth perspective, assets make you money, they make you happy, or they make your life better. One of those three. So forget the textbook definition of an asset. If it doesn't make you money, make you happy, or make your life better from a lifestyle standpoint, I'm going to suggest that's not an asset. Time wasters cost you time and give you no benefit in return. And then liabilities cost you money, happiness, or quality of life. They might also cost you time as well. And so what I want you to think about is, and this will be an exercise, you can sort of get in the mindset for it now, and you'll probably do the follow-up to it as you go on, is to think about there's these different dimensions to your life. Now, different coaches and authors will identify different ones. So not everybody agrees upon the exact which ones they are, but there's different parts of our life. In my case, I identify spirituality, not so much religion per se of any brand, but just our connection with the divine nature, the universe, if you believe in that. I happen to. Our connection with family, romance, friends, health, fun, finance, career, growth, and giving. And so in each of these areas of our life, there are certain things that an asset, for example, is going to make these better. They're going to do something that helps us improve parts of our life. A time waster is going to do nothing for us. And a liability is going to take away from us. You might say, wait, this is kind of interesting. You're trying to put math on this? Yes, because sometimes it can be very difficult to make a decision on preferences. Do I like strawberry ice cream or vanilla ice cream? Do I like this? Do I like that? Do I like this dessert? Well, as my kids will hear me say sometimes, which I think I learned this from my dad as well, that's tasty, but it's not tasty enough for me to want the calories. So no, I'll have a different dessert that's sugary or whatnot. It's really kind of, is it really worth it? And so when you look at all the things you have, there's a simple way you can do this. And there's a tool that's in your workbook that's going to help you look at certain things and see where do they fall on this continuum for you. So at an asset, every time you put a plus, that's going to be a plus one, a zero is a zero, and a negative is going to be a minus one. And so, for example, if I had an oversized car, I might say, well, that doesn't do anything for the spiritual dimension of my life. It helps my family get from point A to point B. It does nothing for my romance, my friends, my health. It sometimes helps with fun because we get to go someplace on big trips, but it costs too much, so it hurts my finance. And so overall, that's a one. That's probably somewhere in the time waster area. It's not that great of a situation. Now, one of my things, this is, we all share about things that are weird about us. To me, one of the sexiest things in the world is a paid off car. I love keeping cars. One of our cars right now is 15 years old. And because to me, just I can do something else with that money. Every month that I'm not paying roughly $500 between a car payment and insurance, I can do something different with that money, or I can simply choose not to work those hours that I would have to work in order to make that money. So a debt-free car, at least in Wade's world, is a pretty cool thing. Education, is it always valuable? Well, if we don't use it, but we paid for it, well, then maybe it's not quite so valuable because maybe it's not affecting our spiritual dimension, our family, our romance, our friends, and our health. But it's taken away from our fun because we either did it halfway or partway, or maybe we did even worse. Maybe we did the work but never implemented it. So it's unused or unimplemented in that way. So that can be something that could be a negative thing because it's costing you time, it's costing you different parts of your life, but nothing came back from it. Versus where you, let's say, use an education, something that you learn. And then as a final example, let's say an overpriced house. And again, I'm using by definition the word overpriced, not a house in general, an overpriced house. We'd say, yeah, there's, it's kind of helping the family that we have a place to live, but it's not helping the family because I'm having to work too hard and too many hours to pay for it. So if you take this, at least conceptually, this mathematical view of the world, then what you could do is you could go through and identify 5 things that are really costly to you. And what I'm going to ask you to do, and I'm asking you to put this in the chat, so we'll pause a second here, is if you'd write down in the chat, type in the chat, one thing that you know is a liability to you. Now, this doesn't mean you cannot afford it. You might say, Wade, the liability is this thing that I have to take care of it. I've got to wash it. I've got to, it's fragile. It requires a lot of high maintenance, but I really don't use it. If you'd put in the chat, what's one thing that for whatever reason is a possession, but it's a liability for you? Okay, thank you for sharing that, Danny. Definitely, if your health's not where you want it to be, that definitely can be something that could be better. There you go, Rennie. Yep, boom, 15-year-old car. Love it. So what I want you to think about is that as you're doing this, that sometimes it's going to be a physical item. Sometimes, and this is where this kind of overlaps with your time. Sometimes it might be a commitment, but very often it might be sticking with things right now in the sense of the material world. It might be something that simply takes a lot of time. That's just extra for me. Yeah, excess weight. Debbie, for me as a volleyball player, when I'm carrying excess weight, not only am I slower and am I more likely to lose to the youngsters, which is not so good, but I'm also just, it's harder on my body. It's tougher on me. I have less energy to do the things I want to do. And so for a lot of people, I know as you go deeper into this conversation of health, it becomes important to realize what a big deal that is for you and being able to have the energy. And Al, yeah, to your point about COVID, I know a lot of people, we're still trying to figure out certain things, but I think so much of the research has at least supported the generic sense that the better health you're in general, just from a general sense of, yes, do you have energy? Are you eating good stuff? Are you getting a decent amount of exercise? That's going to help you better versus people that maybe perhaps haven't done that as well. So, a lot of variables there. So thank you for sharing there. So now, if that's if those are your liabilities, then the next thing would be, well, what are your time wasters? And this is where, again, sometimes this is tough to check on. For me, I consider anything that I don't need to do is something it's kind of, and it's almost default. I'm almost too big as if I'm some like really famous person, like you can't use my time because I'm so famous. But I don't like wasting time. So for me, maybe wash a car once every 2 to 3 months. I don't know if I have to, if it's dirty. I mean, I have hygiene, but I don't want to wash my car. And that's not a knock. If somebody loves washing their car and they take care of it, great. That's just not something I love to do. So time wasters sometimes are things that they're not costing you money per se, but you're having to maintain them. You're having to keep them up. There's a quote from Henry David Thoreau from his book Walden where he said, and I'm paraphrasing, that it'd be better, was it better to be suckled by wolves, to be raised by wolves, than to be given a whole lot of stuff by somebody that you have to take care of. He's like, it's almost like an imposition on somebody that they would, make you take care of that. And then finally, there are your assets. So your assets, and again, if it's in a physical sense, so a paid off car, again, could be an asset, a paid off home, or a home that's a reasonable investment, a rent contract at a reasonable investment. Again, so many of these things, if you take the idea in, and I know Tim Ferriss really hammered this idea home in his book, The 4-Hour Work Week, the idea of enjoying things without having to own them. He said, look, if you want to, drive a Lamborghini, great. Rent a Lamborghini for a day or for a few hours. It's going to cost a heck of a lot more than buying one. And if you're never going to be able to afford one or you don't want to work that hard, then that might be the way to do it. So you can have valuable assets, things that just work for you. And this is where, Rebecca's point about, it might not be something that sparks joy in you. The table I'm using right now that's holding my computer, I've had for 20 plus years, and I keep it somewhat out of nostalgia, but it works. It's an asset. So, and again, right now we're not talking about relationships as assets. That'll be in a different conversation. But just in general, looking at what are the things that contribute to your overall situation, and then anything else that you invest a lot of time with. So there might be certain things that you invest your time in and they're not low or high or mid, or you're not sure. And so, wait, if I spend, your house should be on one of these lists, or wherever your residence is, or whatever you pay, whether it's rent, whether you own it or not. And of course, maybe you own it, maybe you own it with the bank, maybe you outright own it. What are those things? And so, usually, any sort of long-term financial commitment that you're not really loving uh, falls into this category. The whole saying of a boat owner's two happiest days: the day they buy the boat and the day they sell the boat. And usually that's because when they buy the boat, they're using the boat a lot, and so it is an asset. And then later, towards the end, before they get ready to get rid of the boat, they're not using it, and so that leads to that situation where it's really an unused asset. So it's really just kind of a waste. And so as you do this work, what you're going to find is you're going to find this sense of there's a lot of things you don't need to buy. There's a lot of things you don't need to do. There are a lot of purchasing errors or mistakes that you don't need to repeat. You can simply kind of have your stuff in order. You can have your stuff ready, and you can be investing in things that are good for you, that add to your quality of life, but don't take away from it. And so in order to improve the effectiveness of these three things, I'm going to suggest that number one, you increase your assets by investing more in them and similar things. So anybody who's made poor decisions in the real estate or stock market knows that a house or a stock can certainly be a liability. If you buy the wrong ones at the wrong times, that's a liability. That's not an asset, even though technically by some definitions, financial definitions, it's an asset, but that's losing money. That's a liability. So whatever it is, and in a more sort of, I was about to say metaphysical sense, but in an intangible way, you are an asset. So investing in you, your education, you're investing your time in you. If you're here, a lot of times you invest in your money. I've personally invested over six figures in my education over the last 20 years. I know so many people who've done that as well. Not in that they invest in my education. That'd be awesome. They've invested in their own educations. Ideally, with time wasters, you either want to eliminate them or you can convert them. You might say, well, how can I convert a time waster? Well, it could be that you simply say, okay, I'm going to start using it more. So it's something that I was putting all this maintenance time into my boat, and I was only using it once every, 12 months. Well, I'm putting in the same maintenance, but now I'm using it once a month or twice a month. Now it's turned into an asset simply by the way I manage it or the way I handle it. And then same thing with liabilities. And usually liabilities sometimes are easier just to let go of. And this is the tougher part. Think of a bad stock that just keeps going down. And there's the voice in his head that says, oh, but at some point it's going to go up. Let's wait. Let's hold on to that. Let's have more pain. Let's have more sorrow. Rennie, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Sometimes it's like, no, it didn't work out. It's like a bad thing. You don't have to hold on to it. If and when you're still dating, or when you were dating, you didn't have to hang on to every bad relationship and keep in touch with them and check in with them. The whole idea of the break was so you could just both move on. So that's, that can be a good thing. So in order to optimize your things, what I'm going to suggest you do is, with the piece of this for optimizing, is you write down what the thing is. So in this case, it's an oversized car, and you appraised it. You don't have to do the appraisal part. I find it helpful. If you're not really a numbers person, you might say, no, it doesn't really matter. For some people, it helps them really identify which are the ones they need to look at. And look at, do I eliminate or convert this? Because theoretically, you'd be doing one of those things. And then if you're going to convert it, what would I do? Well, I'm going to not technically convert it, but I'm going to still have a car. I need a car, but I'm going to get a smaller, more economical car. And then at least it would be a 5. And what's my target date? I'm going to do that within 30 days. So this is your action guide for you to start filling out for yourself. If I have an overpriced home, I say, wow, this is really just hurting me. It's in the negative side because it's taking up so much of my time. Again, we'd want to convert that and say, well, wait for real estate prices to change. Or let's say you're looking to it was overpriced in the sense you possibly buying it. And you can say, well, I'm not going to buy that new overpriced home. Excuse me, I said that wrong. In other words, you not buying the new overpriced home is what we're looking at here, and say, okay, well, I'm going to wait 2 years. I'm going to wait till real estate prices drop, because if I buy that new home, the home I want right now, it's overpriced. And so it's just going to cost me so much more in time and money that I'd rather not do that. And again, Rennie, I know you've got, I'm sure, some good solid ideas on that. For me, definitely, I've heard so many people say what you invest in your home, you can be house poor, can so impact different parts of your life. And so then when you do this for yourself, you can find, 5 to 10 things that you can take action on and make happen in your life. And so that's really your action plan to take action on this. And then the other part to this, and I'm just going to introduce this here as a concept, is once you've done this, then I'm going to suggest that you start looking at this strategy of moving towards mastery. And you're not going to get there right away, but you start doing this. And the way you would do this is to say, okay, if I'm going to optimize my life outside of work, my relationships, my time, my money, my things, what I want to be able to do is I want to be able to create a situation where I am getting it more the way I'd like it to be. So, for example, when my house and my car is easily afforded in my monthly cash flow to allow for my desired lifestyle, that's something I want to do. When do I want to do this? I want to do I want to do this? Yes. When's my target date? Such and such date. And what's my status on this? Now, I'm going to give you 10 ideas, and then there's a form where you can create your own. So that's number one. Second, keep vehicles multiple years, many years, to minimize ownership costs. Third, less than 1 hour a week servicing or maintaining items other than, let's say, dishes or laundry, unless you hire somebody to do that. But in other words, not spending a lot of time having to care for physical items. Items and clothing not used within the past 12 months are given away. So, there's that saying that if you put something in a box and you go back a year later, you still haven't used the stuff, unless it's a memory or something, maybe you can let it go. You probably don't need it. It might cost you more in storage space than it does to simply let it go. Number 5, wait 2 weeks before purchasing any item that is new to you or an impulse purchase that's of a significant amount. I'm not saying if you see the new flavor of Tic Tac, maybe you might be able to afford that. But for bigger ones that you might want to be aware of that. No storage units outside the home, and then having a garage that's accessible if you have a garage, depending on where you live in the world. As storage units outside of the home, you're basically paying, unless there's a specific reason for it. That's well, usually there's always a reason, but that might be something where you're simply tossing away money that you could have kept. Patiently purchasing expensive items at an ideal time. So, for example, Black Friday, holiday sales. If you know you're going to get something, and you know that this company or whatnot does sales once in a while, great. Then just have the money ready when the Black Friday deal comes, or whatever the time is, or the Memorial Day sale or 4th of July, whatever it might be. Great, that's the time to do that. Definitely, all of your photos and important computer data securely and automatically backed up online. That's a big one. The peace of mind with that, as somebody who's lived in Lima, Peru, and moved around the U.S. at different times. Whenever I just had my business and didn't have it backed up, I remember once I took a trip and I had it on a passport drive back at home and whatnot, but it wasn't backed up online. And I always thought, well, gosh, what if I lose my laptop and something happens at the house or something gets stolen, versus having it online, knowing it's there. Then having the ability to evacuate your home in an emergency situation with your precious items. So things like photos or very precious items that you would want to take with you if something happened. I live in Florida, so it's hurricanes. They take a little longer to arrive, but sometimes people have to make that decision. If a hurricane's coming, to think, I might not ever see this house again. What are the things I'm going to bring with me? And knowing what those are and having that be light and easy to pack. And then, minimizing your environmental waste and just having a situation where you're not having to add to the waste for a lot of reasons, but just having it be that you're spending less money on the packaging and the other materials that goes with that. So once you see that, you can create your own mastery milestones for that and see what that would look like for you to tackle.